Welcome to An Idiot Box, where we look at the history and quality of television and movies throughout history. My name's Samantha, and today we're going to be looking at Scrubs Season 1, in celebration of the new season, which has just started now on Disney Plus for all of us Brits, and for Hulu and ABC for literally everyone else on the planet. So, Scrubs is an amazing show. Just going to get that straight off the bat. When it comes to season 1, it was released between October 2001 and May 2002. Created by Bill Lawrence, who you'll probably know for so many other shows. This guy is just an absolute god when it comes to making sitcoms. It was focused on a group of medical professionals in a US hospital and all the kind of stuff that they deal with both with the medical field and also with their own personal lives. The core group is only of 6 main characters for season 1, but as you can probably tell pretty early on, the whole cast is massive. There are so many recurring characters throughout this show, and it works really well. I will just state though, it is counted as a sitcom. I kind of have always disagreed with this term for Scrubs. I'd say it's more of a comedy drama show, as we look at both the ups and the lows, and sometimes those lows can get into really dark places, especially in this first season. So let's get straight into it by looking at Scrubs Season 1. My first day is honestly such a solid introduction to the show. The plot does everything you really need it to. We meet all the group of characters that we'll be following throughout the rest of the show. The comedy is really on point. There's some really good drama moments, especially towards the end of the episode, and the pacing is a bit rushed at times, but it's a first episode, it's only 20 minutes, they really need to try and get as much out of it as they can. My only real issue with this episode, as you could probably tell, I've tried making the footage for this show look better than it is, but this show's never been remastered, and this first episode especially feels very much like a pilot that should have been reshot, but wasn't. The location isn't the same as the rest of the show. There's some really weird character moments that they've dropped pretty quickly, but overall, it's a really good start. 8 out of 10. Episode 2, My Mentor. Now, when it comes to the storyline of this one, it's quite similar to the pilot. Honestly, this feels almost like a pilot 2.0, but it's not overly bad. The characters are still really good. We essentially get reintroduced to a lot of them since the pilot, and it does a good job at that even if some of them are a bit stereotypical at this point. The comedy is still solid, but the pacing itself is not great in this episode. It feels weirdly slow compared to how the pilot felt really fast. And it's still a solid episode, do not get me wrong, but like I said, it feels a bit like a pilot 2.0 instead of its own proper episode. It's reintroducing the audience to these characters who, from our perspective, we've either just seen because of streaming, or when you watched it on broadcast, you saw last week. It's good, it's a 7 out of 10, but yeah, pilot 2.0. Episode 3, My Best Friend's Mistake, feels like both a step up and a step down for the show. This is what I mean by the drama aspects of this show, and I think it does a really good balancing act between the comedy and the drama. This one focuses essentially on our main character JD, thinking that Turk has, well, messed things up, and it may be putting a lot of people in danger. It's really good looking at the kind of mistakes that can happen with medical professionals, but the characters feel very rushed in this one. It feels more like it should have been an episode that was 30 minutes instead of 20, and they're really rushing through in the third act to try and get it to its end. It's kind of bland overall, to be honest, because so much happens so quickly, you don't really get a feel for what's overly going on. It's not bad by any means, and it looks at some really interesting aspects of the medical field that this show would later on perfect. But right now, it suffers from Season 1 syndrome, so 6 out of 10. Episode 4, My Old Lady, is probably the best episode of the show so far. It's more experimental and we get to look at a lot of the other characters. We follow JD as we normally do when he meets this old lady who just is ready to go, sadly. We also follow Turk, his surgeon friend, as he starts building a connection with one of his patients, and we also follow Elliot trying to, well, prove that she's not a bad doctor. It's a solid episode. The comedy in this one is kind of lacking, but it's because of the drama focus. The characters are a lot more defined in this one. I really love seeing all of them kind of deal with this kind of issue, and the ending of the episode really does break my heart. The literal only flaw I find in this episode is that it is a complete drama episode. There's no real comedy at all. I think that's good for the kind of episode they were trying to make, but they haven't got that balancing act right yet, so 8 out of 10. It's still great. And going from the best episode so far to the worst episode so far. Episode 5, My Two Dads, it's not great. You can feel very much that they weren't getting ready yet for the kind of show they were making. The main plot itself is quite good. I love seeing Cox, who is JD's mentor, essentially, versus Dr. Kelso, who is the head of the hospital. Their kind of dynamic is really good to see, and as a main plot, it's awesome. The main issue with this one is the B plots. So there's 2 different B plots in this one focusing around a poopy pen, and one focusing on Elliot's magic boobs, which she flashes to kids. It's just really weird. It's very much a product of its time, let's say. I can't hold it too highly against it, but it did make me really cringe, so 5 out of 10. It's just a bit mixed. Episode 6, My Bad 2, is the best episode so far once again. I know I only said that 2 episodes ago, but it's honestly true. This episode focuses quite heavily on Dr. Cox, who's kind of an empty shell of a man. He's just nasty and mean, but he has a heart of gold. And in this episode, his heart of gold really starts to shine as we meet his ex-wife, Jordan. And I'm just going to state it right now, Jordan is one of my favourite characters in media because she is just pure evil and wants to see chaos burn just for the hell of it. She is so fun. Every line from her nearly has me on the floor laughing. The pacing throughout this episode is also perfectly done, and I even really like the subplot this time, focusing on Carla's mum. Carla, who I've not mentioned yet, is Turk's girlfriend, and it's funny. Really enjoy it. Solid episode, 9 out of 10, best one so far. Episode 7, My Super Ego. This one focuses really well on JD, seeing his more kind of jealous side, if I'm being honest, as there's a new intern called Nick, who is just perfect at everything, and JD pretty much hates him for that, because he was the whiz kid. Now, this episode has some amazing comedy, and the pacing is really solid. My honest main issue with this episode is the character of Nick. He's kind of one note, but seems like he'd be explored a lot more throughout the rest of the show, as this show has a pretty massive recurring cast. But no, Nick's dropped at the end of this episode, and the concept isn't really explored any further. JD basically gets whatever he wants by the end of it, but feels a little bit bad because Nick left. It's still good though, it's still a solid 7 out of 10. It's just that the character of Nick feels very much like wasted potential to me, having a proper rival. Episode 8, My 15 Minutes, is the first proper political episode of Scrubs. And when I say that, Scrubs really does like to delve into more serious topics at times. This time it has a really good look at race relations and especially virtue signalling. JD and Turk's relationship throughout this is really good, really solid. You see both sides of them and how they work together as best friends. They basically sort each other out. They're the yin and yang of each other. The comedy is really good, and the commentary when it comes to the way that certain companies and certain people exploit having, minority workers to be like, hey guys, look, we're one of the good ones. It's really solid. The pacing's good, if a little bit fast, but Carla and Elliot's subplot is also strong, so solid 8 out of 10. This is another really solid one. No Day Off is another really good, interesting concept of this show. It essentially follows a patient's POV, but because this is Scrubs, the patient is JD, who has appendicitis. It's really good. I love seeing the kind of tension between Turk and JD this early on, as for the past 8 episodes we've not really had much to argue about. Anything we do disagree with, like in the previous episode, is solved really quickly. The comedy's also really funny. I love seeing JD kind of be scared of being judged by the other interns in the way that they judge patients. The pacing's fine, it ends kind of abruptly in all honesty, but Ice Cold Elliot is one of my favourite subplots throughout the whole show, and they bring it back pretty often how Elliot is terrible with her patients. It's just really fun. There's nothing special about this episode, but it's a 7 out of 10. It's completely solid. Episode 10, My Nickname. Now, I'll just say off the bat, the nickname subplot is not the main plot, as you could probably tell by the word subplot. And it's fun, it's really good. I love seeing the janitor, who, once again, a character I've not really mentioned yet, but he's just there to torment JD in every episode. It's fun to see him get knocked down a peg or two whenever he's on his high horse, as JD is a ridiculously lovable, but slightly arrogant character. I really like as well in this episode the nurse versus doctor dynamic. Carla's relationship with JD is really interesting to me, being both a best friend and also his other best friend's girlfriend. It really looks at stuff in a more complex way. The pacing is also really solid, but the main issue bringing this one down is the main subplot about a bench war. It's just not funny, I'm sorry, maybe I'm just an absolute Grinch, but I just don't find it funny, so 6 out of 10 overall. My Own Personal Jesus, also known as Episode 11, also known as a Great Depeche Mode song. So this one has another really good look at what kind of issues you can have in a hospital. This one with religion versus science. It's all done really well. I love seeing Turk's journey throughout this episode, trying to blend the two together, as he is a man of science, but he's also a man of God, and he needs to find that balance in between. It's just really solid. Jordan's also in this episode, so that automatically just makes me happy, and even though this episode is much more of a drama than a comedy, it works quite well. The slower pacing really helps to bring Turk's issues straight to the forefront. I also, once again, just love seeing Jordan and Cox's relationship looked into a bit further, since Jordan is his ex-wife, so I want to know what this life was like before the show started. It's just another solid 8 out of 10. My Blind Date is probably the best look we get throughout the first season of why Dr. Cox wanted to be a doctor. He seems very jaded, very uncaring, but we see really well in this episode that he does care. The idea of no deaths in a day in a hospital is just really good to look at, especially from character point of views. I love seeing Dr. Cox and Elliot's relationship start to properly develop, as they've not really had much screen time together before this. The comedy was also really good. There were some very funny moments, but there was also some moments which were a massive gut punch, which I always appreciate. The pacing was really good in this episode, with the only issue actually being JD, aka the main character. His subplot feels very forced, something not really necessary, and my god is JD shallow in this episode when it comes to the girl who's trapped in an MRI machine. It's still good though, it's still a solid 7 out of 10. Episode 13, My Balancing Act, is another weird one to me. I love seeing the Kelso storyline. It's really cool seeing his perspective on things, especially when it comes to Kelso versus Cox, and I just really like seeing more of this character. I will state the episode is ridiculously funny at times. There's some really solid jokes in this one, possibly the funniest episode so far, But the main issue with this episode is the ridiculously slow pacing, and I do mean super slow. This feels more like a 10-minute episode that was stretched out to be 20, and because of that, at times it can feel really boring. Like, they're not really sure how to fill the runtime, so they just keep adding more and more subplots for all the characters that don't really do anything in either the comedy department, the drama department, or the character department. It's disappointing since the Kelso and Cox storyline is so good, but it has to be a 5 out of 10. Episode 6, My Drug Buddy. Now, this one I haven't really mentioned yet, but JD gets a girlfriend in the previous 2 episodes, and this is the end of that story arc, and thank the Lord for that. The Carla storyline in this one is really good. I love seeing the kind of relationship that can build between unlikely friends. AKA Carla and Kelso throughout this one have to share a car. It's funny, there's some really solid humour, and some really, really good pacing. The main issue is JD's annoying girlfriend, and Carla and Cox's storyline starting to get really weird. So it's revealed in this episode that Dr. Cox has a crush on Carla and always has done, and it's just a bit uncomfortable, to be honest, especially since Turk knows and seems weirdly okay with it. It's an odd storyline, it's dropped after season 1 for good reason, but overall this episode's fine, it's a 6. Episode 15, Bed, Banter and Beyond. And this episode is not good. I'm just gonna state it right off the bat. This is the first bumper episode of the show where it's 30 minutes instead of the usual 20, and even with the extra runtime, it still feels like multiple episodes just kind of smushed together. The characters in this one are quite nasty to each other. I get the idea of like a deteriorating relationship, but Elliot and JD in this one honestly feel out of character with how nasty they get. The episode's also not very funny. The pacing is awful. Like, we literally see their entire multiple month-long relationship start and end in this episode. It's not good. It feels like something that they just kind of didn't know what to do with as a plot point, so they just shoved a bunch of ideas together. I will say I do really love the therapist framing device in the episode. I think it does it really well, but overall this is a bad episode. It's a 3. My Heavy Metal is one of the more weird episodes of the season, and by that, it's not overly memorable, but is still very good. The episode explores grief in probably one of the best ways the show ever does. We get to see how it affects the main characters, and we especially get to see more of Dr. Cox and JD's relationship, which I always appreciate in an episode. But apart from that, the pacing's good, but nothing special. It's not very funny, and it's basically there just to get rid of the JD versus Elliot stuff, which I do appreciate the episode for. Honestly, this episode feels more like a filler episode. It's still good, like it's still a solid 7 out of 10, but it's nothing overly special, so I'll just move on to the next one. Episode 17, My Student. This one is probably the most fun concept they've played with so far throughout the show. We essentially get to see a lot of med students who have to visit Sacred Heart Hospital, and our little group of interns has to, well, help them. There's some really good moments in this. I loved seeing a new side of JD, which is very much like Dr. Cox. Elliot as well, I love seeing a more vindictive side of her instead of the usual crying and meek version. There's some really solid jokes in this one, and it's just a breeze to watch. The main issue I find with this episode is the majority of the med school characters that are introduced in this that, just like Nick in episode 7, seem like they'll be relevant are just dropped. Only one of them stays, and she literally stays for like 1 episode, so it's a bit of a missed opportunity once again, especially with such a massive cast. But overall, it's still solid. It's still a 7 out of 10. Episode 18, My Tuscaloosa Heart. Now, this one is the best Kelso episode by far for this first season, and it is so funny. I love seeing how Kelso went from this kind of sweet, music-playing, kind-hearted man to the evil little bitter wench he is nowadays. It is so funny. Also, seeing Cox's life just self-destruct is always fun, as Jordan is in this episode, but I don't think that Jordan's whole sex thing is actually legally binding. It's a lot more drama-focused as this episode outside of the main plot, which I do think works very well for what this episode's trying to do, but overall, this feels like it should have been the bumper episode. Lots of things happen kind of fast by the end of this one. It's still good, it's still a great episode. I definitely give it an 8 out of 10. I just wish this was the one that was given those extra 10 minutes. Episode 19, My Old Man. And what a fun episode this is. From the title, I was expecting something similar to My Old Lady, which is a heartbreaking episode. This one is very much the opposite. So we get to meet a bunch of the characters' parents. We get to see, like, JD's dad, who's kind of a lowlife in all honesty. We get to meet Turk's mum, who is essentially just Carla, which causes some fun relationship drama. And, oh my lord, Elliot's parents are some of the worst people I think I've ever met. This episode, though, also has Ali Ermey, who, if you don't know, one of the best actors of all time, rest in peace, just playing the janitor's dad. That will always be one of the best castings for a guest actor I've ever seen in the show. The humour is solid in this one, the pacing is great, it has a really sweet ending. I honestly just wish that we spent more time with these parent characters, because they are so fun. Solid 9 out of 10, it's honestly brilliant. Episode 20, My Way or the Highway. This one has basically a battle between Turk and JD when it comes to a singular patient. We get to see both of their more nasty sides, which I do appreciate in this episode, since usually they are portrayed as gods among us. Elliot also has really great character development throughout this episode, which is really good as well, since, once again, throughout a lot of this season, she does just cry and whine a lot, so it's great seeing her more stand up for herself here. The pacing's okay, if a bit wonky at times, and the comedy in this one is really solid, especially when it comes to Sean, who is the on-again, off-again partner for Elliot throughout pretty much the rest of the show. He's just such a fun character, and I love always seeing him. My main issue with this episode is the Turk and JD storyline resolves ridiculously quick. Like, there's no real reconciliation between the two of them, so 7 out of 10, because it is still good. Episode 21, My Sacrificial Clan. And thank God that we are in the home stretch here, because I don't know how the hell I used to do videos that were like multiple hours long. What the hell was wrong with me? I really enjoy this episode from many aspects, except for one. So, first of all, I've just got to state that it's great seeing the fear of sickness coming from JD, because a lot of medical professionals do go through this. My grandma was a nurse, and she developed a bit of fear of getting ill herself for a while. It was well before I was born, but it's still interesting that the show tries to explore that. Elliot and Sean's sudden ending is what honestly annoys me. It is so sudden. They seemed like they were really building up the character of Sean, and then they just drop him in his second appearance. It's odd. I do like some of the drama of this episode, though, and the same Elsewhere cast members appearing as guests, essentially reprising their roles from the old medical drama show. It's really good, so 7 out of 10 overall. Episode 22, My Occurrence. This one is another brilliant episode, if I'm being completely honest. We get to see a lot more of Dr. Cox's backstory before the show, as we have once again got Jordan in the episode, but we also meet Jordan's brother Ben, who is played by the absolutely incredible Brendan Fraser. I am so excited for The Mummy 4 coming out at some point, and it is so good. It's really fun that we also get to see a character called Jill, who is a recurring character throughout the show. She is absolutely barking insane and essentially becomes Elliot's best friend for a while. It's just got that perfect blending of comedy, and then the ending has one of the hardest hitting drama storylines in the show. The pacing is completely solid. It sucks that most of this episode isn't actually real, but this is only part one of the first two-part story in the entire show, and yeah, it's a 9 out of 10, it's brill. Episode 23, My Hero, and damn, this episode goes into some dark places that, honestly, I love. It really looks at some of the harder aspects of working in medicine, especially when it comes to those that you're treating being close friends or family members. It's really, really hard hitting at times. The ending is brilliant too, I'm not gonna lie, but that little moment, especially in the middle, looking at all the stuff with Dr. Cox, it is so good. This episode is also ridiculously funny. There's a whole subplot of Elliot having to do a peer review of Dr. Kelso, and it's only her peer review, so it's definitely not anonymous. The pacing's great. Ted's band makes an appearance in this episode. Ted, who is the lawyer of the hospital, by the way, and another really fun recurring character. It's just a near perfect episode, I'll be honest. The only thing that could have made it more perfect, in my opinion, is if it had an extra couple of minutes. Still though, another 9 out of 10, hell yes, Scrubs. There's an old saying about keeping your best to last, and Scrubs Season 1 definitely does that with My Last Day. This honestly feels like it could have been a season finale, and it's not overly surprising since it was an idea at one point that this would be the final episode if it weren't renewed for Season 2. It is so good. We essentially get to look at all the characters from how they started to how they are now by the end of the season as they're properly developed, and the characters that we know and love to this day. The comedy is so good in this one. I laughed out loud at multiple points whilst rewatching this episode. And like I said, it feels like a proper conclusion, with one minor exception. Jordan, the best character, appears at the very end of the episode and essentially just spills the tea on all the stuff going on between the characters in secret throughout the season. And it's so good. I love this scene, it's probably one of the best scenes in the entire show. And yeah, this episode's a 10 out of 10. It's perfect in my opinion. And that, my dear beans, is Scrubs Season 1. Overall, this show was a massive success for NBC, with averaging approximately 11 million viewers per episode. It also got very positive reviews, got nominated for a bunch of awards, and yeah, it's just a really good start to the show. I think overall it's pretty solid, but at times kinda messy. You could feel they weren't fully sure what they wanted to do with the characters, as this might have been the only season of the show, so they try and get as much out of them as possible. But it ends up being renewed for the second season, and wow, I cannot wait to talk about that one. Overall though, I give Scrubs Season 1 a 7.29 out of 10 overall. Like I said, it's really good, it's really fun. Bill Lawrence just, my god, that man can write a sitcom. And yeah, like I said at the start, it's not just a sitcom, and I think that's what makes Scrubs stand out. It's got those dark moments, it's got those character moments that most sitcoms wouldn't even dream of looking at. And that's not a negative at sitcoms, by the way. I like that a lot of them don't do that. I also love that Scrubs does do that. It does look into the darker aspects of these characters and their lives, so like I said, I can't wait for Season 2, and I'll hopefully see you all next week. Toodles!